Yes, we just had a Apple September event. I know. We had a new iPhone 14, a new Apple Watch Ultra, new AirPods. What more do you want? You want another Apple event, right? Okay, well, you're going to be happy then because Apple is planning a secret October event where they are going to announce a lot of new products, including a new iPad, new M2 iPad Pros, new M2 Macs, like an M2 Mac Mini, and a refresh to the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro, and possibly we might even see a new M2 Mac Pro. And hey, there might also be an Apple TV as well. All right, so let's talk about this rumored Apple October event, or maybe even kind of a lack of an event, but some new products anyway. So, what's the first thing we can expect out of this event? Well, I think the most given product to come out of these events are new iPads. And that actually starts with a refresh of the entry-level iPad, that nice little $329 iPad, which currently uses a very old design. Well, one of the big rumors going into this new iPad launch is that it's actually going to get a redesign with flatter sides that will look more like the iPad Air and iPad Pro. Now, you might be wondering, why are they doing a new design for the iPad? Why invest all this money into it? And that's actually because this iPad is also going to receive USB-C, and that is going to move the entire iPad lineup to that USB-C standard. And actually, Apple is probably going to have to make all of their products USB-C very soon, including the iPhones, because of a new law in Europe, which basically mandates that by 2024, every mobile product that Apple would sell would have to have a USB-C charger. Now, one of the reasons why Apple is adopting the flatter sides because of this USB-C charging is because they're going to have to still retain support for the Apple Pencil, while the current Apple Pencil for that cheaper iPad currently charges via Lightning port. So either Apple could make a new first generation Apple Pencil that had a USB-C connector instead of a Lightning connector, or they could do the more obvious upgrade and just give the iPad flat sides so you can store and magnetically charge the already existing Apple Pencil too. This also means that this new iPad should support the current accessories that are designed for the iPad Air and iPad Pro. So this cheaper iPad should actually have support for the Magic Keyboard with the trackpad. And this iPad is supposedly even going to be getting a nice chip upgrade as well, and it should support the A14 chip. So this is actually going to be a pretty powerful device. So if this iPad is still around $329, this is going to be a big upgrade for this device. It is going to be extremely capable for its price range. Hopefully Apple doesn't raise the price. Usually when Apple adopts a new design for a product, they do raise the price, and $329 is such a good price for this iPad. But even if this came in at something like $350, which would just be a minor price increase, this still sounds like an amazing value. And in a lot of ways, even though this is like the base entry-level iPad, this is kind of the iPad I am most excited for in 2022. Now, this isn't the only iPad we are expecting in 2022. We are also expecting an update to the M1 iPad Pro, although this does not sound like a big update. So basically, the M1 iPad Pros, the only real concrete thing that we know about them right now is that Apple is going to take that M1 chip and swap it out with an M2 chip. There's not going to be a new design. There's not going to be reduced bezels. There's not going to be like new materials. Like, it's just basically going to be the same M1 iPad Pro, but now with an M2 chip. And that also means that even the 11-inch version of the iPad Pro is not going to be getting a substantial update in the display technology. Apparently, it's still going to use the same LCD display as last year's model, and that excellent mini LED ProMotion display is just going to be exclusive to the 12.9-inch model. The only other things that might happen with this iPad Pro, based on rumors right now, is maybe it might get wireless charging on the back. Like, apparently the Apple logo might actually be like glass to allow for wireless MagSafe charging. And then another rumor I saw, which does sound kind of plausible, was that Apple was going to move the camera position from the portrait orientation that it's currently in into a landscape orientation. So when you hold the iPad in landscape orientation, the camera would be on the top. And I feel like that's how most people use their iPad Pros now. So I actually think that would be a nice welcome upgrade. But yeah, the major upgrade here is just going to be a spec bump moving from the M1 chip to the M2 chip. All right, I know the iPad Pros are kind of a bummer. They sound pretty disappointing, but I do have some more exciting updates for you. And this actually comes in the form of new M2 Max. Now, Apple already released the M2 chip, and they did so in the older body of the 13-inch MacBook Pro, and then a new, more exciting, updated M2 MacBook Air. But there's still a lot of computers in their lineup that they have to upgrade to the M2 chip, and apparently the next one on the chopping block is the Mac Mini. So for the first upgrade, we can probably expect a pretty simple upgrade, and that is that Apple's gonna take the M1 chip that was in the Mac Mini and swap it with an M2 chip and all the benefits that brings along. So we should probably expect the same design for this Mac Mini, which is still a pretty older design, and then Apple's gonna put in the M2 chip, and then you're gonna get better options for memory as well. So the current M1 Mac Mini maxes out at 16 gigabytes of memory, while this new M2 Mac Mini will be able to be maxed out at 24 gigabytes of memory, which is actually kind of cool because one of the bigger limits with that M1 Mac Mini was the maximum of 16 gigabytes of RAM, and being able to put that out to 24, it's not like it's gonna give you the most memory, but it's gonna be just enough of an upgrade to where a lot of people could probably really just get by with an M2 Mac Mini as their only production machine. And if we do get an M2 Mac Mini, I'm kind of curious to try that out to see like how far I can push that as a dedicated desktop machine. And I personally think that this M2 Mac Mini is probably gonna be the best Mac for performance per dollar. But that might not actually be the exciting Mac Mini desktop, because apparently there is going to be a second tiered Mac Mini now in this lineup. So if you notice, if you go over to Apple's website, you'll see that Apple still sells an Intel Mac Mini, which is kind of strange, right? They don't really sell too many Intel computers, just really that and the Mac Pro. And if you look at the price point of that Intel Mac Mini, it's very expensive. It's $1,099. And if you actually did like a competing spec for the M1 Mac Mini, the existing M1 version, and put it against that Intel one, the M1 smokes it in CPU performance and in GPU performance. The M1 Mac Mini is a much better computer, and it's at a much cheaper price point. Well, Apple is actually going to upgrade that Intel Mac Mini with an M2 Pro chip. Now, the major improvements to this M2 Pro chip are supposed to be around GPU performance. So it's still apparently going to have the same 10-core CPU as the M1 Pro, but with increased clock speed, just like the regular M2 chip. So it will be faster in CPU performance, but apparently the M2 Pro is going to be upgraded from a 16-core GPU to a 20-core GPU. And then another big rumor is that there's also going to be an increase for the maximum amount of memory, just like we got with the M2 chip. So instead of 32 gigabytes of max memory on the Pro chip, you're going to be able to upgrade it all the way up to 48 gigabytes of memory. Now, there's some conflicting rumors on whether this updated Mac Mini will have a new design for this higher end version. There's been some rumors that maybe it'll get like a plexiglass top and maybe kind of like a slimmer profile overall, like kind of like flatter. But looking at the new Mac Studio, I kind of think that maybe it won't get a new design. I feel like it'll just look like a shrunken down version of the Mac Studio, which is basically what the Mac Mini already looks like. So probably not a new design, given what the Mac Studio looks like. But yeah, this thing sounds kind of compelling because it's going to be an important mid-step for people who want a small Mac desktop with really good performance, but don't necessarily want to jump up to the Mac Studio pricing territory, because that starts at $2,000. And there should also be some notable improvements for this machine up from the regular M2 Mac Mini, because this should have more Thunderbolt ports, should have more support for more external displays. So I think this will probably have support for at least 3 external displays, and it'll have better GPU performance as well. So that's going to be very important for a certain portion of Mac customers. I also think this is probably going to be a very compelling Mac for a performance per dollar perspective for the Pro market. So yeah, M2 Pro Mac Mini, I'm very excited for that, but obviously there is no need for an M2 Max Mac Mini, because that's kind of like the Mac Studio. Like there's no need for this to have an M2 Max chip inside of it. But that doesn't mean we won't see the M2 Max chip, because along with these Mac Mini updates, we're also going to get a refresh to the 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. Now, this is kind of very similar to the iPad Pros. These are not exciting updates. They're not rumored to be exciting updates. And really, the only upgrade we should probably expect for these new MacBook Pros is just a chip swap. So instead of the M1 Pro and M1 Max chip, we're going to get an M2 Pro and an M2 Max chip. The M2 Pro specifications I listed before are going to be exactly the same in this 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. And then for that new M2 Max chip, well, we're going to get the same 10-core CPU, but then we're going to go all the way up to a 40-core GPU design. And apparently, that could be with as much as 96 gigabytes of memory with this new M2 Max chip in the laptop space. So those are small updates. It's kind of like back in the day when Intel would release a new chip and then Apple would just kind of give a small spec update. Like they would just change either the CPU or the graphics cards inside of the machines, and that would really be the only update. And that's basically what we're expecting for the new 14 and 16-inch MacBook Pro. So not a major update, but hey, if you were thinking about buying a 14 or 16-inch MacBook Pro, you might want to wait just to see what kind of power improvements these new chips bring. I think the big open question, though, is whether or not we will see an M2 Mac Pro during October, because Apple gave us a 2-year time frame to complete the transition over to Apple Silicon, and the only computer that really hasn't made a jump over to Apple Silicon yet is the big desktop Mac Pro. And there's just so many open questions about this Mac Pro. Like, will it actually have like a big desktop tower design? Will it have swappable or upgradable parts? Will we be able to change out storage? Will we be able to add more RAM into this machine? Will we actually be able to use dedicated graphics cards? We just don't know at this point. It seems unlikely based on how all the Apple Silicon computers have been up until this point, but the Mac Pro is like a special beast. Like, maybe it will actually have some swappable or some upgradable parts. And maybe it will come in like a big, expansive, upgradable desktop tower. We just don't know at this point. But what we do actually probably know is the specification of the M2 Ultra and M2 Extreme chips that are going to go into Apple's most powerful computer. So like on a base level Mac Pro, we can expect an M2 Ultra chip with a 24-core CPU and an 80-core GPU with up to 192 gigabytes of unified memory. The M2 Extreme chip is going to take that double, basically. So it's going to have a 48-core CPU, then a 160-core GPU, and then all the way up to 384 gigabytes of unified memory, which basically means that this thing sounds like a beast. Like, I already have the M1 Ultra Max Studio. That performs so well. I've literally never run into any slowdowns with that computer with the 128 gigabyte memory configuration I have. And this M2 Mac Pro, it's just on a whole other level with these chip specifications. So I don't think I'm gonna buy one, but it's gonna be interesting to see if Apple actually announces it. And then something I might actually be interested in is apparently that when they do announce this Mac Pro, they're also gonna update the display that comes with it. Well, it doesn't come with it, but the one they sell alongside it. They'll take another $5,000 from you, but they're not gonna give it to you for free. But yeah, a new Apple Pro Display XDR, which apparently is going to have now a 7K display. So maybe it's gonna move up in screen size to like 36 inches. And then there's also been some rumors saying maybe it would have ProMotion, but I can't see Apple doing a 7K 120 hertz display. I just feel like the bandwidth for Thunderbolt wouldn't support that. But hey, if they do release that, a ProMotion 7K display, if it's $5,000, if it, maybe it will include a stand this time, maybe I'll actually pick one up, because having an HDR capable display with a higher refresh rate for a big external display, that would be nice. Oh, and one last rumor. I saved it for the end because I felt like it was the most boring. Apparently there might be a new Apple TV update as well. It would be an Apple TV with an A14 chip. Maybe for games, I don't know. Maybe higher frame rate. New Apple TV. Who doesn't want a new Apple TV? It plays TV shows, so that's good. I do like my Apple TV. It's just the last update seems kind of unnecessary besides the new remote. So are we really going to be getting a lot out of a newer update? Probably not. But yes, that basically is everything rumored for this new secret Apple October event. And it may be secret because Apple might not actually be having an event. Now, I actually think they will have an event because it's just so easy for them to pre-film something and then release it. But according to Mark Gurman, he's kind of speculating that a lot of these updates don't really seem too major. A lot of them are just spec bumps replacing M1 chips to M2 chips. So he's thinking that maybe these will just be press releases. Like Apple will just release like at 9 a.m., they'll release a press release going, a new M2 Mac Mini is available, a new M2 MacBook Pro is available, new M2 iPads are available, all that stuff. The only reason I think there might be an event is if that M2 Mac Pro is ready. I think they want to show that off at an event. So if that is ready, or at least they're ready to show you a sneak preview and maybe they start selling it next year, then I think they'll definitely have an event because they're going to want to show off just how powerful that Mac Pro is. But yeah, that's basically everything we can expect for the end of the year. So if you like this rundown of everything, please give me a like. If you want to see more from the channel, including future coverage on all these new Apple products, make sure you're subscribed. And hey, I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for watching.